Hi everybody and welcome again to Coffee with Craig. I've gone a bit live a bit earlier than expected, but we're going to be talking today about the possibilities of a World War III. Is it something that's likely to happen? I'm going to review some of the predictions I've already made about this. And we'll also talk about, I'll take your questions about the future and, the purpose and meaning of human survival. And could we possibly ever wipe ourselves out? So we're going to be talking about World War III and some of the predictions that have been in the paper where they talk about me as the new Nostradamus and things like that. So where's my start button? Here we go. Here we go. See you in a minute. Well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining me again. Sorry about the little bit of confusion today at the start because I started a bit, I set it for an hour wrong. So apologies. But in a way, it's a bit like the way it works sometimes with predictions, I think. I think sometimes we see things ahead and the timing is one of the most difficult things of all. But I want just to say hello to a few of you, just as you're coming in here. Just sort of check you can hear me, guys. Yeah, you're all saying hello and you can hear me fine. Yep, good. Okay, so I'm going to talk about basically the ideas of World War III. Now, those of you that follow me might have noticed that there's been quite a lot of activity about my name around the internet lately. A few of my predictions have gone kind of viral. And they weren't quite exactly what I intended to say. So I just wanted to first clarify a few things. Now, I gave an interview recently with the Daily Star, who were very good. I'm not moaning about them. I mean, fair enough. I gave them some predictions, but just like every newspaper, of course, they need to make a good clickable headline. You know, they need to grab the attention with the headline. And from what I said, it's kind of right, but kind of gets a bit pushed out of proportion because the headline ended up like this. New Nostradamus warns horror plane crash in Taiwan will spark World War III this year. So I didn't actually say World War III because the problem is when you get these ideas of a World War III, you immediately get images in your head, don't you, of nuclear bombs and everything being destroyed and every country in the world piling in to cause maximum destruction. It was picked up again also by the Lad Bible, which is another great channel. So again, I'm not moaning about it because it's fair enough, but they pick up from one another, you see. You get one headline and next thing you know, other people are picking it up. And this has kind of been picked up by many of the newspapers, including the Mirror. And you can look how it develops. You know, now we've got pictures coming up of massive explosions, and they're all calling me the new Nostradamus. Even in France, you know, where their cherished Nostradamus comes from, we see the similar sort of headlines. And again, look at the images, look at the pictures, you know. So I just want to talk about that a little bit today. And basically, it's not quite what I said or not quite what I meant. And like I say, I do understand how newspapers like to get nice clickable headlines. And it wasn't exactly what so I tell you, what did I say? What am I saying is going to happen? My thoughts are, and I've said this, those of you that follow this channel will know that I have not actually been talking about World War III, but I've been talking about the possibility of the conflicts in Taiwan. And I've been talking about that for 2 or 3 years now, and feeling that it's coming soon, and feeling that this year is probably going to be the time of the conflict. And I've been talking about that for quite some time. And as we now see, it's all over the newspapers because it's starting to become very topical. This is what I was warning about. And I felt it would be sparked, this conflict over Taiwan would be sparked particularly by some accidental aerial conflict or submarines. I felt either we're going to get something like possibly both. 2 submarines might have hit each other, collided, or something like that happened. Not necessarily firing torpedoes at each other, but an incident. Similarly, I felt an incident in the air. And that incident in the air, I was thinking it could be something like airplanes or something. But of course, we've just recently had these balloons going across, which could have been something that I saw. Perhaps that was, am I pushing it too far? But could that have been what I was seeing? This air incident, this unusual sort of thing that could spark the problems? I mean, these balloons, for example, have been filled with some quite toxic gases. And now they're saying, oh, well, most of these are probably just, ordinary, nothing to worry about sort of things. But anything invading your airspace, particularly if it's coming from China, is going to be a bit of a worry for people. What if you were to fill these things with, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but what if you were to fill these things with sarin gas? Or what if you were to fill them with aerial-borne anthrax? Or something like that, I mean, these are serious concerns because these could spread, not just be spy satellites, but spy balloons, but could be all sorts of different things. So we have our worries with this, and I think China is the biggest threat to the world since the times of Germany, really, because we have the Chinese Communist Party. God knows what sort of wealth these guys have, just like Saddam Hussein had with his underground palaces and things. All these secrets, all these few people taking the wealth of the many, and a hugely developed country now that China is, still with a great deal of poverty for the common man, but a few again have vast amounts of wealth. So my thoughts are with China that China is going to be the great pariah. It's become what I said it would become. And it's also, there are, we have sort of quite weak leadership, not just with Biden, but all around the West, I think, at the moment, and a place like China could be ready to rattle the sabers, particularly when they hear recently that the British and we see it in the British papers and the American papers, I expect the same, that we're running out of armaments. We've given them as much as we can. We've been in the wardrobe, we've given them the missiles and the bombs and things, but actually we need the rest for ourselves just in case. So stocks are low and can't be replenished quickly. So the idea, if I was Xi Jinping and I had my eye on Taiwan, I think 2023 is not a bad time to have a shot at that, is it? They're running low, we've got weak leadership, their eyes are distracted by Putin. And this could be a time to try to do something. And we're beginning to see this. But that is what I kind of talked about quite some while ago. So people are saying, he saw it. So this is World War III. But it doesn't have to be World War III, I think. I don't think it needs to become this idea of everybody flying nuclear missiles at each other, for example. I would be worried, of course, if we lived in somewhere like Japan or something, and you're unarmed with all this going on around you. But my thoughts, it's going to develop at this stage, certainly in 2023 sort of time, into some possible armed conflict and some accidental getting right to the brink. But I do think we'll end up with a trade war with Japan, with China. And Japan would have to be involved in this too, of course, because that where do they stand with all this? That would be very worrying in that whole basin and for Australians as well. But I think we'll end up with a trade war, possibly with some of these, the straits of, you've got the Straits of Hormuz where the oil comes through. That could be blocked. There could be a block on the around Indonesia, through the straits there, where trade could be done with China. You could quite easily turn off the trade to China just like that if you put battleships in the right places. But I think ultimately, and I don't think it's all going to happen 2023. It's all very easy for the press to grab these headlines and say it's all going to happen this year. And I have not said that. This is something that's going to develop over a period of time. We're going to see the start of it round now. I think it will develop into greater conflict in longer term. We can talk about that in a minute, guys, if you want with your questions. But I think what we're going to see is mainly a trade thing at the moment and pressure put on. And ultimately, as I've said before, I see the Communist China Party caving in. I know it's massively powerful at the moment, but who would have ever thought the Berlin Wall could have come down in the past? And who could have possibly considered that the Chinese Communist Party could cave in? And I think we're going to see much more courage amongst the people of China to actually change their leadership and pull down these dictators, because that's what they are. So those are my first thoughts. Now, also, some of the other things, just as a little bit of review at the moment, some of the other things that the press picked up on was that I said about there'd be some big cosmic event that I saw coming up soon that could knock out satellites, possibly a solar flare or something. Well, actually, that happened. Again, going back to the Star, which is probably not the most broadsheet of papers, if we're honest, but they talked about a huge piece coming off the sun. And I have predicted that there would be these solar events this year. Could these also be having an effect on the earthquakes that we've been having? You know, could it be the sun that is creating pressure on the earth? You know, because I mean, the moons and the planets were all crushed and turned around by the power of this enormous sun that we have floating in what we're floating around. Things happen there, they happen here. We know very, very little, don't we, about the sun and its effects upon Earth and its effect upon life. So that was another one that I saw, that I predicted, that seems to be bearing out. And I think there's probably more to come with that, because I think we will get some effects later on as solar winds begin to sort of change, and we might see some satellites knocked out, but not everything. But I think there's concerns about that this year, my feeling is, and possibly more earthquakes to come, because I'm getting this feeling with these major changes with the sun. On a more mundane sort of level, I also spoke, you remember, about Brexit and the changes we're going to see in the UK with the Conservative government, and particularly Rishi Sunak, I said, was going to start to do some very unpopular deals with Europe. And we seem to have a headline here from the Daily Mail that came out reasonably recently, saying that, you know, there's a plots to unravel Brexit. This was another thing that I think we're going to see more of, which is a prediction I made and did happen. And like I said, I also said that there would be an earthquake in New York. I commented on this recently. There was quite a high grade earthquake in New York that came simultaneously with the dreadful stuff we've seen in Turkey. So my thoughts are, you know, maybe there's going to be more earth changes this year. Maybe we're going to see more as the earth plates shift. And I get the sense it's something to do with the sun. Okay, so those are some of my thoughts. I just wanted to particularly clarify the World War III stuff. You know, you'll always see in the newspapers every year, Nostradamus predicts, not me, this thing they're dubbing me with, but you'd see Baba Vega and Nostradamus predict that this year will be the big one, you know, World War III. Every year they predict it. So they kind of took what I genuinely said and kind of just put a bit of a spin on it, didn't they? And fair dues. That's what the newspapers are about. I've been doing media for too long to get worried about those things, but I just thought I'd make a clarification video on it. And I'm going to have a chat with you guys in a moment about some of your thoughts. But I just want to put, before I start bombarding me with questions and thoughts, I just want to put another thought up that I had, because, you know, could we ever wipe ourselves out completely? Is mankind ever are we heading on a disaster pathway? And, you know, are we not going to make it? And yesterday I took a day off and I went down to a place in Dorset called Chapman's Pool, which is a a remote, hard to get to bay, where you can get fossils. I went with the grandchildren and we went down there to hunt for fossils and took perilous walks down to the bay there, and it's easy to find fossils there. It's fabulous. It's the whole Jurassic coast, as it were, of Dorset, right the way down to Cornwall. It shows different periods of the history, and we were pulling out fossils from the period of the Ammonites, the curly ones. And those Ammonites had been, I think it was 66 million years ago, they kind of faded away and they started. So 66 million years ago, they faded away. And they were around, I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe they were around for about 140 million years, if my memory serves me right. So 140 million years those guys were around, just sitting in the sea, baking in the sun, and gradually getting sucked into the mud or whatever had happened to create all these fossils that we pull out. And the ground, the stone there is so flaky, it's almost like a baked mud, but you see them in it and they break up in your hands very often. And I think, 140 million years that guy could have been sat there. And there's Mig coming and looking at it, and with my grandchildren and enjoying a few moments of thinking about the incredible history of us on the planet. So it's taken those vast amounts of time to get anywhere near the sort of consciousness that we have now. The Earth has spent all that time getting to the point where we can have a physical body that can ask questions like, who am I? What is death? Why are we here? The Ammonites couldn't ask that, but we can. And I'm always, because I know that consciousness can extend outside of the human body through, first of all, through telepathy, for example, but also that we continue into the next world and life continues and we can communicate with the spirit world. It makes me think, well, it's been a long process to get to this point where we can become spiritual beings. And I can't see how we could possibly destroy it all and wipe ourselves out. I know many species have been here before. The dinosaurs ruled the earth for vast periods of time, far, far longer than we were around. And so did these Ammonites. And they're gone completely and been replaced. But I think all of the evolution of Earth has been not about just developing the physical body that I'm talking to you through now, but also the spiritual body, the eternal body that's here forever. And the whole of existence is not here to create a physical world. The whole of existence, in my opinion, is here to create a physical communications system through which we can communicate from the spirit or from the quantum world. And that will never end. I don't believe that we will wipe ourselves out. I don't believe that we will have a third world war that will take us back to the Stone Age. I don't believe that we'll make such huge mistakes that we will wipe out this whole human evolution string. I feel that we will ultimately, we'll become super beings in time. Because when you think about the future, if you lived only a few hundred years ago, 500 years ago, and you were to sort of know about the world today with all this strange thing what we're doing now, like communicating through the internet, or all the devices we have and all the food we have and all the world we have around us, it would be completely inconceivable. How would someone from medieval times get on if you put a PlayStation, one of those 3D things on their head, augmented reality things, they freak out. And I think it's the same for us. The future is almost inconceivable, and it's inconceivable what we're capable of. Now, not just in terms of material things, but what are we capable of spiritually? When I go to India and I see holy men that are capable of materializing things, what are we all capable of? And are we likely to wipe ourselves out? No. And even so, there's probably overseers there that would keep an eye on the human race, perhaps from the spirit world, who are capable of materializing into this plane, or even other planets, perhaps. But these are just ideas. But I'm just throwing these ideas out, and just wanted to make clarity about some of the thoughts. So I'm going to come to you now, guys, and have a chat with you and see what you have to say. Let's. My logo's missing here, isn't it? Let's stick it up while I'm there. There you go. We know what it's all about now. So coming to your comments. So thank you for everything you've been saying. Now, we do need questions. That's it. I see you putting the word question up in advance, and that's great. If you can do that, I appreciate. Right. Okay, Ginger Tea, thank you. I have kind of spoken about, and that's well on topic as well. I like to try to keep reasonably on topic, though I don't mind going off in different directions. The balloons floating across the US, will there be more, and will it escalate into conflict? You see, this is what I was saying earlier on. Could this have been what I was seeing as what could be the conflict thing, an aerial mistake of some sort? And like I said before, there's all sorts of question marks around that, isn't there? What could these things be filled with? Could you, on a balloon, you could, like I said, you could drop sarin gas, perhaps, or some equivalent. They're filled with some chlorine type, not chlorine. There was some chemical in it that was affecting people claiming that it was affecting them and making them ill. Could they have been trying it out and testing it? Could they be testing the air defense or how far people would go? Well, it's only a balloon, but we fired a multi-million rocket at it to bring it down. Like, these things are not cheap to send up and fire these missiles at them and so forth. And what could they be filled with? Gases, anthrax, radioactive dust. And so my worries are that they could be the start of something more, actually. I think we will see conflict with China. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. Okay, this one here. When will they stop the boats? You're talking about the boats coming across the channel, I presume, here. I think we will start to see a gradual decline in that. I think this year will be quite an important year for it, actually. More importantly, when we get closer to elections, won't it? So that's probably going to be, when's the next elections are going to be 2024, possibly. And I think if that happens, then they're going to have to clean up the act and say, look, we closed our borders. Same with 2024 in America. You can't have a leaky border going on all the time, because it's such a political liability to have these things. So I think we'll start to see it. I think I want to see another year of it before we get it sorted out. And of course, the other problem is going to be what's going to happen now on the borders of Europe. We have awful situation in Turkey and Syria. That's going to get worse, of course, because all those people, how many people were homeless? Is it 5 million were made homeless or had their homes damaged? That's one hell of a lot of people. And we have no decent infrastructure there. There's no, proper sanitation, fresh water. The world turns its attention now, and we all try to give a bit of money and we all try to help, but they're going to need a lot of money to get 5 million people sorted out. And so a lot of those people are going to start migrating, and we might start seeing greater migration into Europe because of that. So that's where I think the fear is in terms of migration. And really, we must give resources to allow people to rebuild their countries and allow the young of those countries to rebuild the country. Not going to say, we'll take all your young people and we'll make an economic boom for our own countries, and we'll take all your doctors and we'll take all the people that are educated. That's not fair either. They should be rebuilding the country, and we should be helping them. Right. The Nicola Bulley one, I don't want to talk about that one, because it's a bit unfair on the people who are suffering at the moment on that. I have had my thoughts. I have spoken privately to a few people, but I just feel the predictions and things on that are a bit just too sensitive at the moment for those poor people. what we got here? I haven't read this one properly, but I can see it's been formatted properly. Karina's saying, I thought the world's future every year is populated with more evolved souls. So why are we the wars and the conflicts? Because, yeah, that's a good. I think we will. More evolved souls will be incarnating. There's also some very unadvanced souls at the moment as well, particularly in people whose, for example, I think our young at the moment have very short attention spans because of not because they're any different. It's just that and I'd be the same if we were constantly using the sort of technology we're using that does all the work for us. It's not necessary for us to retain knowledge. We can go and look it up on YouTube, or we can do a quick quick how-to on YouTube, and we know what's going on. We don't have to learn anything, we don't have to retain anything. I'm the same. I've just done some graphics that I had to do for this channel. I needed to know something. How do I do it? On YouTube, and I'll forget it by next week, and I'll have to look it up again. So we have, I think, a very dangerous situation in terms of basic human skills at the moment, which are making the world a less safe place in many respects, because I think you do need to retain knowledge. You do need to turn that knowledge ultimately into wisdom. But if you're constantly looking up knowledge, you're weak, and I think that's a danger. But your question isn't quite that, though, is it, Karina? Obviously, you're talking about if more evolved souls are coming into this world, which I think they will now. I think it's kind of like a call for it, because we are at the turning of the ages, and we've been talking about this for a long time. But we're coming slowly out of the darkest periods of Kali Yuga into a newer age. Like I said, there's possibilities. Some say it's the turning to the new age. Some say it's a turning for a temporary period within Kali Yuga of a bright age. But we're shaking off the past at the same time. And when we move from one age to another, there's often friction. And it's claimed in the Puranas that there's friction in the Indian texts. And we will get the last kicks of the old before the new comes in. The new age will be will particularly be an age of energy. And at the moment, we're in an age where we're running out of energy. We'll be careful about the heating. We're buying all those new heater things for ovens, and Jane's bought, I forgot what they're called, and everybody's saving money because you enormous heating bills. But we will in this age have new energy. This is going to be one of the other things that I think is going to be will change the world. I see a period coming in time where we will have unlimited energy, and that will create an incredible change of things, an incredible change of the workplace. I feel also in the future, I see the end of capitalism and the end of communism too. Both those systems, which at the moment are one of the main conflicts, because it's still between capitalism and communism. You don't win in either society. In communism, a few take it all and everybody thinks they're equal. In capitalism, a few take it all and we all work like slaves for the big companies. There's no freedom. But I see that a time will come where there will be kind of like, and I think the internet's going to help with this, a bit like the rise of the self-employed, just like we had the rise of the middle classes. But the work from home culture means that more and more people can do their own thing. Look at YouTube. I'm running a TV channel here. How could I have done that without huge resources in the past? And when you look at websites that offer, services for freelancers, freelancer.com or fiverr.com and people like that, it gives people an opportunity to be able to be self-employed or even do temporary work. I think that will become the way that you will employ people. It can come and go as you want. You won't have your bosses. You're employing self-employed. That will be a major thing, particularly with this together with the advent of unlimited energy, which will allow greater industrialization without the need for a workforce. But these are things perhaps for a future thought. So let's have a look what you're saying here, Maureen. That looks interesting. Could all this talk of extraterrestrials and UFOs not change the course of the war with Russia and the up-and-coming conflict with China if the leaders see this as a threat? Now, you're talking about UFOs as the extraterrestrials you're talking about, not the balloons this time. Well, I think there is a lot of calls for disclosure, isn't there, about UFOs, and I think the problem with something that's unknown to us, particularly the idea of extraterrestrials, is it's this idea of they're keeping it from us. Who are these people keeping it from us? um, perhaps we've had contact. The problem is we don't know. We haven't got the facts to go on. The talk of it, I don't think, would change the coming conflict. But maybe one day we'll get some intervention if we push ourselves too far. But I think what we'll see, it won't be like flying saucers coming down to Earth. It will be individuals that live amongst us who have super powerful abilities. It's the rise of the Superman or woman, I suppose, in some ways, but not like some of the more distorted versions of this were in the past history. This is more people with high spiritual powers, because I've got very limited spiritual powers. I mean, someone like me and many others who have powers of prophecy, have the powers of mediumship, have the powers of telepathy and empathy, and all of there's loads of us out there, but we're small fry. I think there is the capability of humans that can be amongst us that you could change just by being in their presence, that their radiance will be so powerful that it will be almost hard to be near them. That's one of my thoughts. I do see that happening in the future. I think he will step down eventually. I know he's got kind of a raise in popularity at the moment, and he's trying very hard to take control of the Labour Party because they have the same problem that everybody has. It's when we look at the press, we always hear people talking about the far right. If there's anything you disagree with, it's always far right. If you don't agree with woke, you're far right. If you don't agree with transgenders, you're far right. We don't hear much talking about the far left, which is also a worry, I feel. And this is what the problem with the Labour's had. They've been suffering, just as the Tories tend to have the far right. Labour has the far left. And Keir Stammer's going to find it very hard to keep that in control. He's opening up a Pandora's box there, but he's not strong enough. I think he'll ultimately change. I think he would change before the next election. I can't see him standing for the next election. So that when the next election will be, do we know? 2024 maybe? But I think he'll be down before that. Who will be the next US president? I'd like to think Trump, but I might be wrong because I'm worried that I've become kind of blinkered with this because I saw him come into power originally, and I felt he would have done much more than he did. I think Trump. I think it'll be Trump. I think he'll do it again. But then, like I say, maybe it's got to be so difficult when you're making predictions because I don't see it all, guys. I see bits of it, and I don't see everything for every topic. I get feelings and thoughts about it, and I got it wrong with him last time because I didn't think Biden would get into Paris. I was wrong. So am I still wrong? I don't know. So I'm concerned. I think I'm seeing. I'm not. I might be too blinkered on this, but I actually think he would probably. You need somebody strong to stand up against China. And I don't think DeSantis will do it because I think DeSantis is going to be absolutely rubbished. I feel as if his credibility is going to be destroyed somehow. There's been rumbles of that, and I said about this before that with DeSantis, I feel that he'd have rumbles. And like I said before, there was something I couldn't see it all because the next president, Trump's there, but I felt as if there was a black woman as well. So is he the power behind the throne? These are things that I've spoken about before. And I'm sorry, but I'm a bit vague on it. But that's my thoughts. It's something to do with Trump ticket with someone else who's a black woman who has the power. I've said that before and you speculated on, and I can't see further than that. Maybe it will come clear to me in time. I don't see it all. I'm not the new Nostradamus. They told me I'm the new. Well, actually, Nostradamus didn't see it all clear either, did he? So, it's perhaps an unfair comparison to call me that. But anyway, that's what they've been doing in the press. But I suppose it's flattery in there. I could say, secretly enjoy it. Yeah, you see, there we go. You're from Taiwan. I was no, not with the name Claire, I expect. Question: you've spoken about an uprising in China. On the TV tonight, there was a show on Taiwan and how prepared we are for war. When do you see the demise of the Chinese regime? It won't come all at once. It's going to come gradually. I feel there's going to be uprisings, put downs, uprisings, put downs, and eventually the leadership themselves might step in and try to get rid of Xi Jinping, but we've got to get rid of the whole thing. You know, I have another kind of funny feeling, actually. It's come to me here, but it's just odd. You know, the terracotta warriors? Well, they guard the great underground mausoleum of the great Emperor of China. I've forgotten his name now. Mighty Qin, isn't it? They sort of Qin, is that how you pronounce his name? I get the feeling that they'll open that. The Chinese are very superstitious about opening that because they feel it could release all sorts of bad negative energy. But I get a feeling something in that's going to be opened. And I see almost the opening of that. Oh, this is odd. I see the opening of that mausoleum, or the rediscovery of something about that mausoleum. It might not be the whole thing, but it's something. The Chinese Communist Party collapses at the same time the mausoleum is opened. That's odd, isn't it? But I've just seen that. I just feel it very strong. So these things, the dafter the stuff sometimes, the more real it becomes. These things are odd. I see something connected with that. I've got a very strong feeling with, and I said something also similarly about the stuff in China that had been taken to China from the old regime having an important role in this. I get a very strong sense of almost like the revenge of history, because China had such a deep history. It's almost like the energy of that is going to reawaken, almost like an earthquake. And it's going to awaken perhaps in the unconscious of the people themselves. You know, it was like China, if you think of it as a person, it's like they repressed everything that they were in the past. Everything that was valuable, everything that was beautiful about China, everything that was miraculous about China was pushed away. And by destroying that energy, you know, by pushing against that energy, it's like in a human, it comes back and almost becomes like a breakdown. And I think what's going to happen is, what I'm seeing, I think, is the unconscious mind of the Chinese people erupting. And we want to be who we are. We want to be Chinese again. We want to be true Chinese. And I feel that will be a kind of like something that is going to erupt in the Chinese consciousness and bring down this materialistic, non-spiritual regime that runs China. The same thing happened in Europe, really, in the Second World War. It was a reanimation of the unconscious mind of Germany that Nazi Germany took control of and misused. But there was a sort of a breakdown, a eruption from the unconscious mind. That's why they did all the torch marches and why they talked about the Knights of Tull, was it, and all the rest of it, Teutonic Knights and all the rest of it. All those strange things erupted onto the stage because people were desperate for something spiritual, which was abused and misused. But I get the feeling something good comes out of China, ultimately, you know. Okay. And India, you know, as I said before, powerful things will come from India. Okay. I see people here also pushing for WhatsApp and trying to push for readings and things like that, particularly on Facebook. Jane and I would never ask people for private messages. We never offer private readings, and we never pitch people privately for private readings. I'm afraid there's an awful lot of fake sites out there, and a lot of naff psychics that come onto this site and try to sort of ask for readings from people. Why do they need to do that? They can't be any good, can they? Okay, so beware of that, please, guys. I'm just spotting things coming up in the comments there. Okay. So lots of comments coming up, less of the questions now. I think it's probably a good time to start thinking about finishing now. So do keep your questions coming. I want to try to make a few. Jane and I, we had a flu. I had to do something on YouTube, on TV channel recently. So we got a bit disrupted. Also, Craig and Jane's show's been a bit late this week, last few weeks. So sorry about that, guys that follow us. Matt, who has and his wife Claire have just had a baby, so we had to sort of shut down a little bit to allow them a bit of breathing space. So it was happy things that stopped us doing the show a little bit, and we needed a bit of a break too. But we'll hopefully all be back online for Friday, so keep following the channel, and Jane and I will go live on Friday. Put your questions now as well into the comments. I know we're live at the moment, but come back, put some more questions in the comments if I missed anything, please, and I go through and pick them up, and we can perhaps sometimes pick those up with some more coffees with Craig's and any topics you want me to address as well. Not just things about the future, of course. I mean, that obviously that's very popular, but also I'd like to spend this time also addressing some of the spiritual issues of the world. You know, what can be my take and Jane's take as well on how can we spiritual insights into the things that are happening around us. Okay, so don't forget to put your comments. So I'm going to be saying ta-ta in a second, as soon as I can find my end of show one. That's what one shall we put up. You see, I've got a number of little clicks I can do here of Coffee with Craig. Let me have a look. Yeah, this one's about predictions and things that I've done. So don't forget, follow the show, guys. If you're new to the channel, please follow us. If you can support the channel, do have a look at our Patreon link in the description below. That helps us support it. Those of you that following me as patrons, we'll do another one of these spiritual online Zooms. I'll set one of those up probably today for you to set up in the coming few days. And yeah, come and join us in as a patron as well. That helps support the studio. And don't forget to follow the channel, give us a thumbs up, write the comment. Let's hear what you have to say. All right, see you soon. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now. If you look back at my earlier predictions, and in particular the predictions I made on the newspaper, The Sun's website, I did actually say on there, the actual words were, there will be a flu epidemic linked to bioterrorism. And my thoughts are that Liz Truss will make it to the final, be the next PM. I think she will actually have a final battle between her and Rishi Sunak. We've not seen the full end of Boris Johnson either, I tell you. But Rishi Sunak actually will eventually, I feel, be the next leader of the Conservatives. So I think there's going to be a few conflicts that Britain's going to be drawn into, including I think Russia is going to take some moves against Ukraine. I think she will make it past her platinum jubilee, which comes up this year. But I think after that, we'll see a sudden and quick deterioration in the Queen's health. And I think we might lose the Queen towards the end of 2022. There's going to be a huge backlash from over the Netflix programs and screening, because I feel it comes out at a bad time. Charles will come to become King Charles, but his reign, I feel, will be short. And funnily enough, actually, another royal prediction came true only yesterday, which surprised me really, because it was such a weird prediction I'd made. I predicted in my earlier videos from 2021 for 2022 that the king, I said Prince Charles at the time because he wasn't actually king at that time, but I said that Prince Charles would be hit by an egg.
And of course, there it is, all in the press today.